So another thing is the justice of God. And this is a very nice, deep point.
Please don't describe your own points as deep. It's kind of pompous.
That establishing the proof against the creation from the fact that that prophethood from the prophet is clearer and more just than for it to be done any other way.
So to repeat it without all the stuttering, establishing a proof against the creation from the prophet is clearer and more just than for it to be done any other way. That's not even a coherent sentence, let alone a deep one.
And for this, God says in the Quran, وَلَوْ أَنَّا أَحْلَكْنَا. He says in the 20th chapter, Surah Taha, verse 134, that if we had destroyed them through punishment before this messenger came, they would have said, Lord, if only you had sent us a messenger, we could have followed your revelation before we suffered humiliation and disgrace.
And? What are you trying to establish with that? I mean, this is just some more typical whining from Muhammad about the unbelievers. They demand, if only he could bring us a sign from his Lord. Have they not already received a confirmation of what is in earlier scriptures? Had we destroyed them with the torment before this prophet came, they surely would have argued, Our Lord, if only you had sent us a messenger, we would have followed your revelations before being humiliated and put to shame. So basically Muhammad's sitting here complaining like, man, they keep asking me for evidence, but like if I wasn't here to tell them God's gonna destroy them, God would have destroyed them anyway, but then they would have complained that they didn't have me. No, Muhammad, I'm pretty sure they would have complained that they didn't have evidence. That's the sign part. They wouldn't have said, oh God, why didn't you send us a middleman to tell us what you want with no evidence? No, they would have said, oh God, why didn't you tell us what you want? Nobody has time for this Mickey Mouse bullshit. So what's supposed to be the point of you bringing up this verse? That because Muhammad thinks people would beg for a messenger if God destroyed them, that therefore a messenger is a valuable thing and supersedes evidence that the message actually is from God? No, really, what's the point? Well, what you're going to do next is just move along and not address that. So I guess I can safely assume you just brought up this verse for no reason, because you didn't actually bring it to a point at the end.
So God has made life a test. He has made this place a paradise or a hellfire. Imagine if a teacher enters a room and tells his students that you have a test. Whoever gets a low mark will be punished. Whoever gets a high mark will be rewarded. The students respond, okay, but what is the syllabus? What's the curriculum? The teacher responds, no, you have to guess and you have to use your own intellect. This would not be considered to be just or fair.
No, it probably wouldn't, but that's also a pretty shit analogy. I mean, in that analogy, it's obvious the teacher exists, that there is some sort of material, and because the teacher said it, probably there's an actual test, and probably there's some actual consequences to it too. So already we're several steps ahead. No, your religion is more like, okay, you mentioned Lord of the Flies, right? So it's Lord of the Flies, there's no teachers around, it's just a bunch of kids trapped on an island, and then one day Piggy walks over and picks up that conch shell and says, hey guys, listen, I just met the teacher and he told me that sometime there's going to be a test and it'll be based on how much you listen to me right now. So mainly the teacher wants you to be nice to me and listen to everything that I have to say and believe everything that I tell you and basically structure every aspect of your life around what I tell you to do. And if you don't, then whenever the test happens, he's going to just kick you off the island and you'll drown. And the other kids look at him like, what the fuck are you talking about? Do you have any evidence of this? I mean, as far as I can tell, there's not even a teacher. And he's like, fine, ask for signs of the teacher if you want to. The fact that I'm saying this right now is the sign, idiots. You know, if the teacher hadn't sent me and he just kicked you off the island and he drowned, you would have been like, man, I sure wish the teacher sent Piggy to warn me. You guys just don't know what's good for you. You'll be sorry, you'll see. See, that's a more accurate analogy. I don't know what it is with religious people and your complete inability to come up with good analogies. It happens every damn time I'm replying to someone who tries to come up with an analogy. So yeah, I mean, my analogy is probably not perfect. You could pick holes in it, but it's a lot better than yours. Still doesn't quite sound stupid enough, but at least it's an improvement.
So another reason why we need prophets is that truth is not only just based on theory, but it's also based on application and implementation. So the prophet,
Piggy,
peace and blessings be upon him, is an example in all matters, a role model.
No comment.
And the creation is a need for a model in matters of in all aspects of life. And having a human paradigm is the best way of reaching the end, and he is a practical implementation of the truth.
Man, the truth sucks.
Now comes the next question. Now we've dealt as to the reason why we need a prophet and the necessity of needing a prophet.
Oh my god, you're done with that part? That's the best you've got? Okay, that was worse than I thought it was going to be.
Now we will discuss who can be a prophet. So there's three possibilities. The first possibility is that all people are prophets, which is completely false, and it's wrong, because I'm not a prophet, you're not a prophet, you've never claimed to be a prophet, I've never claimed to be a prophet.
Speak for yourself, pal. I mean, yeah, I haven't, but that's beside the point.
So this goes out the window. The second possibility is that some are prophets. Now, some people may consider this to be oppressive. Why has this person been chosen to be a prophet? Why haven't I been chosen to be a prophet?
Wow, that is definitely not the first objection I would raise to that. That's oppressive. I want to be a prophet too. Did someone actually say that to you? That's hilarious.
So the third possibility, there's no prophets at all.
Wait a minute. So you bring up that some people might think it's oppressive that only some people are prophets. And then you say, so maybe nobody's a prophet at all. There doesn't seem to be any reason for you to bring up this oppressive idea at that moment, other than that you're tying the idea that no people are prophets to the idea that it's oppressive that some people are prophets. I can't see any other reason you would jam that in the middle there. And the so would imply that the next thing you say follows from that. Some people think it's oppressive, so the third option is nobody's a prophet. So what I'm getting out of that is that the potential justification for nobody being a prophet is that it's oppressive if some people are prophets. And that's it. That's the only reason somebody would believe that nobody's a prophet. You know, a lot of the time with stuff like this, there's this little voice in my head that says, there's no goddamn way that that's what he actually means. It's just too stupid for anybody to say. But then I realize, no, that probably is it. And then my head hurts.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's look at those who say that, those who have a problem with saying that some people can be prophets.
Can be or are. That's a big distinction. Before it was some people are prophets, now it's some people can be prophets. Pick one.
Well, when God chooses the prophets, it's not done randomly. You know, they were chosen due to a wisdom.
Oh my God, you're actually replying to the objection that if some people are prophets, it's oppressive, aren't you? Who says that? Is this even a real thing, or are you just making something up to refute?
Second of all, God tests the prophets, and this is not something that every person can take. One of the companions of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, said, "O Messenger of God, which people are tested the most severely?" He said, they are the prophets, and then those who are like them, and then those who are like them.
Yeah, I'm kind of a badass. Like, God's tested me literally more than anyone. My life is like so hard. Some days I literally can't even, but like, then I do. So I'm like the best human being who ever lived. It's pretty awesome.
A person is tried according to his religion. If he is firm upon his religion, his trials will be more severe. But if he's weak upon his religion, he will be tried according to the strength of his religion.
I have the strongest religion, believe me.
So the servant will continue to be tried until he is left walking upon the earth without any sin.
Really, no comment.
So the third argument is that if all people were prophets, then there will be no wisdom in giving a test, giving life as a test to begin with, as everyone would know the truth. It doesn't make sense.
Well, no, actually, wouldn't that be the wisest possible test? Tell people, hey, listen, I'm God, hello, here's a list of bizarre rules I'd like you to follow just because I'm God and I said so and I want you to show your obedience to me. That's your test. If you do that, you go to heaven. All right, have fun. And then the people who do it go to heaven and the people who don't do it go to hell. Everybody's fully informed. They all know what the test is. I mean, that's a test that gives clear and unambiguous results, right? If the test is designed to test your dedication to God, then that's the way you do it. At least if you want anything like a useful result. This isn't a test in the sense of a test at school. This is a test in the sense of a scientific test. You have to control your variables. And if you really have to compare it to a test as in a test at school, the reason you have a school where you have teachers who know the material and students who don't isn't because we're intentionally withholding information from students. I mean, if the teachers could just plug a thing into every student's brain and upload all the information they want to teach them, they would. And then with every student equipped with the same knowledge, they could perhaps test them on their skill, for example, or their creativity, or if they were weird godlike psychopaths, just on their obedience. That would be far more useful for everyone involved. I mean, not the obedience one, but the other ones. The reason we don't do that isn't because we wouldn't want to. The reason we don't do it is because of the limitations of humanity. Well, God does not have the limitations of a human teacher. The effectiveness of testing is not increased by intentionally exacerbating the problem of student ignorance. What the hell? Of course, an all-knowing God wouldn't need to do tests in the first place. Tests are to inform you of something you don't already know. You give a student a test to find out how well the student knows the material because you don't know in advance. You do a scientific test to find out something about the world because you don't know it in advance. What's God's excuse? Well, I don't know, this is just fun. I'm eternal. I've just been sitting around out here on my own forever. I get bored. I really want to chuck some poor ignorant fools in the hellfire.
And finally, all people have been given something from God, some special revelation, some natural theology, which in Islam is called fitrah, that you recognize. You don't have to be told about something. You recognize it straight away. Everyone knows that lying is wrong.
If you're feeling a little doubtful about that one, just wait till you hear the next one.
You don't have to be taught that lying is wrong. Just like you don't have to be taught that God exists. In fact, you have to be untaught that God doesn't exist, right?
Amazing. Absolutely spectacular. Okay, I'll go back to the lying one in a second. But see, that last one there I know is not true because that's me. Growing up, I was not taught that God exists. I also was not taught that God does not exist. It just wasn't a topic. Now, when I was old enough to start believing things at all, guess whether I believed in God? Of course, you'll probably say yes, because you were raised in a society where everybody's raising their kids to believe in God. And if every kid you knew growing up in a society like that was like, yeah, sure, this God thing, yeah, my parents said that's real, then surely every kid everywhere must be like that too. You're stuck in a tiny little box assuming that what applies to you applies to everyone just because it applies to you. What an absolute joke. Anyway, back to the topic of lying, because this one's a little more interesting, even though it's very similar. See, in this regard, most likely you and I grew up in very similar societies. In the same way that people don't want to be killed, or have their friends killed, or just live in a society riddled with death, and so people tend to really discourage wanton murder. And similar to the way that people want to keep the things that are useful to them, or that mean something to them, and so they tend to discourage theft, people also don't want to be taken advantage of and intentionally misinformed by other people. That comes at a real social cost and potentially a cost to life and limb. Depends what the lie is. And so, of course, most societies, at some point or another, are going to start to discourage lying. The society you grew up in and the society I grew up in are similar that way. But what we take from that is very different. What you take from that is, well, I haven't seen anyone who's really enthusiastic about the concept of lying and thinks it's totally fine. So the belief that lying is wrong isn't cultural, it's just inherent to human nature. Whereas my response is to say, well, I haven't actually ever met anyone who wasn't raised in an established human society. So within my own experience, I have a sample size of 0 people to draw from. There's no way for me to identify conclusively whether this actually is just cultural or if it's somehow innate to every person. Now, you can go and read about feral children, kids who were raised outside of human societies. The problem with them is, we're talking about a concept essentially of language, which is lying. And when kids like this are found, they tend to not even have a language. So it's kind of a tricky problem, really. So while I would say that they're an interesting source of some information about human nature, I'm not sure how well they apply to lying specifically. Other groups who might be interesting to take a look at are sociopaths and compulsive liars. It may be that some people within both these groups believe lying is wrong, but others don't. And then, of course, there's people like me who believe lying is wrong contextually. Not that it's just inherently wrong in all circumstances, at all places, at all times. One classic example is lying to the Nazis at the door about whether there's a Jew in the house. Is that wrong? Well, no, I would say it's wrong not to do that. They come knocking at the door, hi, is there a Jew in your house? Oh, yeah, he's hiding up in the attic, go get him. No, please, in that circumstance, lie away. And that's far from the only example, of course. It's just a particularly extreme one to illustrate the point. So I think the too long didn't watch version of what I just said is prove it, asshole.
So, however, people cannot rely on the intellect to get to the truth in details. That's why we need prophet for the details.
Wait, but supposedly God made people innately believe that lying is wrong, right? And presumably killing, stealing, all that kind of stuff. Well, those are the details, right? You're talking about the moral details, I think. The details of what you're supposed to do, which, in your opinion, would extend to things like prayer and stuff like that. So why isn't that just innate too? I mean, you blew your need for a prophet out of the water with your previous sentence. People can just innately believe things. Great. So make them innately believe that they're supposed to do Muslim-y things, and if they don't do them, then they go to hell. It still wouldn't be perfect. I would still have my objections to that kind of a test. But goddamn if it doesn't make a lot more sense. What do you need a prophet for?
Okay. Now, this brings in the next very important discussion, and that is to what extent can we rely on our intellect alone and give it credibility? So we can rely on our intellect only if we realize that there is a God.
Really? So you can rely on your intellect as long as you believe in God. Well, that's a real 180. I mean, before you said there's the spiritual way of knowing, which is unreliable. There's the intellectual way of knowing, which is unreliable. And there's the prophet's way of knowing. And that's the way that you got to go with for the details. But now we find out that apparently what you actually believe is that no, the intellect is reliable. You just got to believe there's a God first. Well, shit, throw the prophet out the window then.
So I'm going to repeat that again.
I wish you wouldn't. It hurts my brain.
And it sounds very controversial. And if you've got a problem,
don't do it.
I'll solve it.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm not going to go into a rap.
Well, now I'm watching the clock. As soon as I get to 20 minutes, I'm out of here.
We cannot give credibility to our mind, to our intellect, if we do not believe in a perfect God.
All right, so apparently you think you have some infallible, reliable, credible intellect. So you got it made, dude. You don't need Muhammad at all. Just believe in God, and then you can rely on your intellect. When you think about it, that's a pretty astonishing assertion. And it really does seem to fly in the face of this entire speech. And of course, it also flies in the face of reality, considering that even among people who believe in a perfect God, the intellect is clearly and obviously not perfectly reliable. In fact, the intellects of those people are just as flawed and human as everybody else's, capable of the same biases and fallacies and deceptions. But I guess really we don't have to worry about what reality says. After all, we believe in God. Fuck reality. His word takes precedence over realities.
So let's look at the different groups and see how they can actually use their intellect. So let's look at the atheists. The atheists, they say that intellect was designed to survive and reproduce, and anything else is a byproduct. So it is not about seeking the truth.
Okay, I'm not going to even argue about that, because what atheists as some sort of monolith believe the intellect is not the relevant point. The relevant point to the discussion is that you're saying atheists believe that the intellect arose by certain means or for a certain purpose, which is not directly related to learning the truth, and therefore their intellect, either by itself or combined with the tools of logic, mathematics, the scientific method, no matter how much their conclusions appear consistent with actual observed reality, they and only they are somehow obligated to outright deny any usefulness of the intellect, any ability of it to reach conclusions that actually conform with reality, simply on the basis that they recognize the apparent origin of the human brain and the fact that all humans are in fact capable of poor reasoning, yes, partially based on the origination of the human brain in survival. Of course, totally ignoring the fact that we're also capable of good reasoning on the same basis, and the fact that said good reasoning has resulted in all the wonders of the 21st century. Frankly, if that doesn't serve as a satisfactory demo of the product, I don't know what's gonna. So in short, if I as an atheist convert to Islam tomorrow and start to believe in your perfect God, then I'll switch from being unjustified to believe that I can reach solid, well-justified conclusions using my intellect, to being now justified in believing that, apparently on the basis that, wow, God made my intellect. So that must mean it's free of all those evolutionary flaws, all those little foibles of the actual human brain in the real world. Now it's safe to rely on it. Do you even listen to yourself?
In fact, if the main purpose of our intellect, according to the atheists, especially those who believe in Darwinian evolution, then it's about survival. And survival can be based on false beliefs.
Yes, of course, the human mind has specific kinds of biases that come from our need to survive. That's abundantly clear. Fortunately, a very large number of these biases and faults in the human brain are very well known and understood, because they're pretty much common to everyone. But of course, the knowledge of them doesn't make us immune to them. This is why we have to work to recognize these, and be careful about them, and question each other when we employ false reasoning, just like I'm doing to you now, and more importantly, question ourselves when we do that. Constantly be on the lookout for biases, constantly be on the lookout for fallacies. Because of our nature, that's your nature just as much as mine, you need to actually work at this. Have I had any significant problems in my reasoning in this video? Totally possible. Hopefully I'll do better next time. And if it is the case, hopefully my commenters jump all over it and rip it apart so that at least anyone who comes to this video sometime later has some, I don't know, additional nuance, I guess. Either way, I know for a fact you've committed some, and considering the nature of your religion, I doubt you give a solitary shit about mitigating that. In fact, I bet it's encouraged. I don't know how that's supposed to help your reasoning get better. Frankly, it's fucking shameful. The point is, the reliability of the human mind is not based on what you believe the human mind is, or where it comes from. It's based on what the human mind actually is, and how it actually works. These are not the same thing, obviously. They're not even in the same category. You could believe your brain is a potato and still be Albert fucking Einstein. Or you could believe you're the greatest genius to ever walk the face of the earth, your mind is utterly infallible, and in reality it pretty much is a potato. That last one's unfortunately way too common.
So listen to retired Professor John Gray, an atheist philosopher.
Stop quoting people. I want your ideas. Your ideas suck so hard, I want more of them.
So, according to the atheist, intellect is survival of the fittest, and in order to have that mechanism or that process of survival of the fittest, then we can even believe in things which are false.
Wait, and you're disagreeing that people believe things that are false? I mean, what you just said is true. We can believe things that are false, and we can reason poorly to reach conclusions. Either you or I right now are doing that, not to mention countless other people who believe countless other things. So what's the problem? If that's what the atheists believe, it seems like we pretty much nailed it. But then apparently you disagree, even though you're the guy making a video right now running down the intellect to promote people believing in prophets instead. But then you're also saying that it's totally reasonable to pretend your intellect doesn't have all those flaws as long as you believe in God while you do it, thus seemingly dropping a nuke on your whole argument. It seems like you're everywhere on the map at the same time. But then again, maybe I'm just misunderstanding. Maybe that's just my puny lizard brain talking. Anyway, from this point on, you pretty much just ramble about this for ages. And then you start rambling about some other stuff, and I really don't care. And then you have a Q&A session, which I really don't care about. So I guess that's it, we're done. Well, that was a video. Anyway, thanks everyone for joining me. If you liked the video, give it a like. If you want to see more videos, click subscribe. If you really like the channel, please do consider supporting it through the various platforms listed in the description. That small minority of people who do support the channel are, of course, immensely appreciated. Thank you. If you don't want to support financially, you could also help by sharing the video around, or a different video, whatever. Thanks everybody, I'll see you next time.